Gender-based violence continues to claim the lives and dignity of many women in South Africa. The recent tragedy involving Olorato Mongale has reignited national grief and anger. As communities gather in mourning, there's a renewed call, especially to men, to be part of the solution. Joining us now is Celeste Loux from the Tears Foundation Academy to reflect on this crisis and how we move forward. Celeste, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for speaking to us this afternoon. Rather under tragic circumstances, Tears Foundation reaction to this tragedy?
Well, you know, the thing is, the greatest tragedy is that this is one that hit the news, I think. And so when we are grieving for one person, we need to understand that there's a lot of people who never make the news, and we see it every day. So we feel the pain of this one, but we feel the pain every day because our lines are open 24/7 and we have cases coming in every day. So it's a problem of how much goes on the news and how much is actually going on.
So just walk us through those numbers, if you will, Celeste. You raised an important issue, and that's we've focused on that which comes to the fore. But there's so much, as you suggest, that's happening behind closed doors, if you will, or that's not in the eye of the media.
100%. I think the thing is that this case particularly struck people because she did take measures. She did take measures for her safety. But a lot of the messages that are going out are about intimate partner violence and not about stranger danger, right? So that's one of the problems. The other thing about stats is it's underreported. So afterwards, there's a whole bunch of people coming out and saying, yes, but these are the people that robbed me, and these are the people that did this to me. And then you've got to ask questions around, were cases laid? Why wasn't someone found? So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that never makes the news, if you want to put it that way.
So how do you assess current efforts to deal with GBV in South Africa?
I think the problem is that we have a lot of really good legislature, groundbreaking legislature, but we have a lack of implementation. We have a lack of political will. We have untrained people on the front line. So when I say untrained people on the front line, although you're trained as a police officer, a social worker, those kind of things, GBV in itself is a very different field. And it is a field where we need to train people how to have a proper response. So until we have first line workers that are doing that kind of thing, we're not going to have a really good response. And the other thing is, are we solution driven? Are we looking at the root causes? Are we healing the root causes? Because it's all very well that we're doing after the fact, policing and justice and taking people to healing, which I must say is not really high on people's agendas. But if we don't heal people and if we don't change the grassroots problems, then the problem just increases.
This morning at Olorato's funeral in Bloemfontein, the Deputy Minister of Police challenged men and raised several tough, difficult, but important questions. Now, I'd like to imagine that some of these questions would speak to the root causes of gender-based violence in this country, some of the stuff that you've just mentioned a little while ago. What is the root cause, and how do you envision we deal with it?
Well, the thing is, I think we've got a lot of root causes. So we've got absentee fathers, we've got a very high rates of violence. We're a violent nation. We just need to take that into consideration, right? We need to look at healing people that are already broken, but we need to look at the next generation and how we're raising them and what kind of moral values we're instilling them. And I think that is something that there's a lack of drive to educate and to heal, because the hope is in the healing.
Now, I often say that almost 3 years ago, President Cyril Ramaphosa talked about gender-based violence being the second pandemic. What do men need to do themselves? What do we need to do? How do we challenge ourselves? How do we challenge our brothers, our friends, our colleagues in the communities?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think men need to hold other men accountable for their behavior. So I think that's one of the things, like, it's, you know, the locker room talk and the, oh, well, I know he does that, but I don't do it, so it's not my problem. That is part of the problem. So if men held other men accountable, that would be a start.
So let's talk about policy or societal change, you know, because it's great us having these conversations. I mean, you talked about a magnificent constitution earlier on, but what is it that's going to tip the scale in favor of action as opposed to repeated conversations over years as sadly more and more women before this tragedy?
Yes, I think the thing is, you know, we've got to move away from sensationalism and start looking at solutions. You know, there's a saying, don't be a bystander, be a stand-byer. So I think that the problem is that we focus on these issues in a way that isn't really conducive to solving them. To solve them, we have to address education. We have to address inequality. We have to address societal norms. And those are things that are long-term things that happen every day. And everybody's responsible for that. That's not the government's responsibility alone, or, you know, NGOs' responsibility alone. That's everybody's responsibility. And people have to hold each other accountable for their behavior. And I think that is where the problem is lying, is everybody's looking at someone else. And also all the focus is on after the fact solutions. So the minute someone has to walk into a police station and lay a charge, we've already lost the war.
Interesting.
That's the bottom line.
Interesting point, Celeste Loux. That's where we'll leave that conversation. Tears Foundation Academy speaking on the tragic passing of Olorato Mongale.